Yeah,
So formal.
just hold it and just talk normal.
So, when you just said going to the heart,
Mm.
do you mean by that sensation, like, or attention with sensation, or is it more imagining the heart, like visualizing the heart, and then releasing and like coming back? Like, could you say a bit more about that?
It's interesting where your hand is.
Wrong place.
No. Naturally, you're there where you. And then when you say open,
Yeah.
you opened up your fingers like a flower.
Mm-hmm.
You said it open, and then the heart coming down. You brought the hand down from your face down to the heart. Why there? Why not to the elbow? Why not to the foot? It's nothing intellectual. We often forget that we are first feeling beings. You know, when we say human being, we don't say human doing. We are human beings. We are not human doers. Similarly, we must feel. Unfortunately, during the last 50 years or so, human beings have moved more towards the intellect. We have such extreme, unnatural, unhealthy reliance on the intellect, as if it's the answer for everything. We need the intellect. We need it to survive, to make a living, this and that, to do most of the things. But intellect only covers one portion of the big story. So we feel. So it's not just a matter of visualizing the heart. It's not creating an image. So that's why when I was doing the bit of a guided meditation, I first start with the breath to connect you back to the body. Most meditators are not connected with their bodies, you know. We intellectualize. Well, how can you possibly practice sati? Then you're forcing the body. You're forcing what you have heard about the Dhamma or the practice into the body somehow. So you're treating the body as a slave. No wonder we suppress. We never learn how to listen to the body. And that's why almost most of the courses, most of the meditation retreats around the world are teaching us to be tense. One of the most common phenomena you see is the forehead, frowning. I would like to go and tap the people's foreheads when they're sitting to meditate, if it didn't like shock them, just to kind of bring them back to take it easy. Earliest days of my meditation practice, for years I used to sit, and after I got up from my cushion, I would have that be wet. I would see it in summertime. It would not just because of the weather, because of the effort I was putting. There was too much virya. Lord Buddha taught other things than virya. He says, Piti manasa kayang pasambati, pasadha kayo sukhang vediyati. The connection of the mind and the body has been severed in most meditation retreats, teachings, because of what people have done with the commentators. The commentators and the commentaries of the suttas, they came in and they separated. Lord Buddha taught samatha practice and vipassana. In fact, you don't see vipassana, maybe you most probably you might see it once or a few times, tops. And it's not the way that we have been taught that it is. And that we owe to Visuddhimagga, Venerable Buddha Gosa. He interpret it in a different way than Lord Buddha did. He separated the calm practice, which later on came to be known as the jhana practice, and vipassana. He said, no, this only gets you to experience jhanas, forget it, that's not going to get you, and you only practice vipassana, that's going to take you to panya. Again, remember that thing I was saying about a surgeon or an accountant who is totally inexperienced, doesn't deserve to be called that? That's what Venerable Buddhaghosa was. He never was a practitioner. And he was talking about and writing the encyclopedia of meditation. To this day, people swear by that as the meditation manual. I have known monks who have said that, both in actually Burma, Thailand, and Sri Lanka, the three major Theravadan countries. Completely wrong when you look at the suttas, because I spent over 20 years studying, trying to understand where is this separation happening in the teachings. Nowhere. So we come back to the body. Lord Buddha was a master at torturing the body, He did it for 6.5 years. That's what the yogis had been doing, and he did the same. And he took it to the extreme. He says in several suttas how he pushed his body to such, beyond any logical or reasonable limits of austerities, where he said, if I were to take one more step, I would have died. He could touch his backbone from the front. That's how skinny he had been. He was a true skeleton. Every time he went to the bathroom to urinate or something, he would fall. He would faint. He didn't have any energy. But he was a master at suppressing. He could get to the 7th, 8th jhana, which was the highest attainment in India. And India was the place to experience anything related with meditation. And his teachers said to him, and they were the top teachers of India. Alara Kalama and Uddakarama Putta. One was teaching the 7th jhana, which was nothingness, realm of nothingness, and the other one was neither perception nor non-perception, the 8th jhana. And he mastered them very quickly. But every time he came out and he was inhabiting his body again, there was a clash. There was no wisdom, no understanding. For that reason, he pushed and pushed, and he came to that state of weakness, and he saw that he was on the verge of death. He was this close. He says, no other being has ever pushed himself as far as I have and still survived. So this is not the path, he said. I cannot attain Nibbana in this weak body. So he took a step back and he said, I've gone to the maximum, the dead end. This is a dead end. And then he started to take care of the body by giving it some nourishment, some rest, water. And then as he came to feel the body in a more healthy state, connected with the body, that's when he went under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya in Bihar. And he sat there. But he knew that he's on the right path. Now, he didn't know what technique he should use, because his techniques that he had been using up to that point were suppression-based. So he just dropped back to the heart. Think of it as intuition. You can call it heart. It doesn't have to be the physical heart. Now I'm trying to answer your question more directly. But oftentimes we could see it as also the intuitive awareness of you. Lord Buddha talked about used two words. One was mano, the other one was chitta or cheto. Oftentimes people translate these as the same, the mind. That is wrong. That is wrong. So for example, when he talks about sankharas, he doesn't say chitta sankhara, he says mano sankhara. Interesting. Usually, sankhara, in this context, it would be about a person who's still working towards arahantship. And suddenly, when it comes to the liberation of the person, he says, akuppa ceto vimutti, the liberation of the mind, unshakable liberation of the mind. In fact, it's not the mind, it's unshakable liberation of the heart. It's not the mind, in a sense. So when we look at, because we don't have the right words in English to properly translate the Pali words. And many of the words that we use today, we think they were always there. No. So many words Lord Buddha had to invent, create, like samadhi. Samadhi was not part of the Indian lexicon. You don't find it. You find it after Lord Buddha coined the term, because it's such a beautiful state. It's not concentration, like so many people say. It's the collectedness of the mind, collectedness of the heart. The mind is so relaxed. Nothing escapes it. There's ekagata. Because if you're one-pointed, there is zero possibility where you could attain wisdom. Insights cannot happen when you're one-pointed, because you're like a laser. You can only see where the laser burns. That's it. But samadhi is open and unified. It's a unique state. So when I mentioned piti manasa sukhang vediyati, piti manasa kayang pasambati. So the body relaxes when the mind is experiencing that joy. It is becoming more and more relaxed. Pasambati. How many people actually practice relaxation when they're meditating these days? When I tell meditators to smile, they think they're doing something wrong. When I tell them to just soften the forehead, soften your facial muscles, they think I'm asking them something unnatural. Lighten up. You're scaring people. If people were looking at each other like, frowning, you just take it easy. Do you go and greet your loved ones with that frowny face? Do you ask things from people, request things with a frown? They're going to step away from you. They think the guy is nuts. So there is that separation which does not need to be there. So, when we're talking about the heart, we're allowing the person to inhabit the body first. Because what otherwise meditators normally do, especially these days, they think the body is from the neck. Well, actually, they're doing meditation and it's from the neck up. And anything that's happening, even if it's sensations happening on the head and this and that, it's like I'm there to basically use the body as a laboratory. Could you tell your loved one, I'm going to live with you, we're going to be a couple, but I'm going to ultimately treat you like a laboratory? Could you have a normal, healthy relationship from that? I really doubt it. Or friendship. You know what, basically what you're saying, I'm going to use you to get to what that's how most people's approach is when they meditate. And that's very unhealthy.
So it's kind of narcissistic?
Yes. Absolutely, I call that narcissistic. Because I am here as self-centered even. And not the healthy way of being selfish. Lord Buddha was very selfish. Because he saw, everybody's going down that road. And he said, no, I want to put an end to samsara. I want to feel happiness. I think that's selfish. It's healthy selfishness, and we don't appreciate that enough. So when you're relaxing, you are inhabiting first the body. And when I mention the heart, oftentimes there's so much tension and tightness around the heart. Each individual has that. And that is why usually when people practice metta, it's a failed attempt. It's just wordplay. It's paying lip service. May I be happy. May I be happy. May you be happy. May they be happy. May my enemy be happy. So let them be happy. Good luck. Go ask them. Call them later on. Send them an email. See if they really got happy because I just chanted this mantra to myself. Pointless. Why pointless? Because I am starting the whole process wrong. Meaning, I don't start from a place of first feeling. This is my answer to you now as it relates to the sensation. Sensation could also alternate depending on the context with feelings in this case. But Lord Buddha talked primarily about three kinds of feelings. Pleasurable feeling, painful feeling, and neutral feeling. Neither painful nor pleasurable. But when you're feeling the heart, that's when really things start to get interesting. When you're not forcing your way, when you're not trying to have it your way, what you're saying, I'm opening up. It's when you're holding your loved one's hand. You connecting with your heart is very similar to you holding your beloved's hand, touching them and allowing your hand to become soft. I think you could relate to that. There's a lot of trust there. Because if one of you is holding your hand tight, you know I cannot trust this person. Similarly, when you're looking at someone, when you're spending time with someone, or when you're holding a dove, an animal. Lord Buddha, I think it was Venerable Anuruddha, or Venerable Sariputta was there. The instruction was to Venerable Anuruddha, I believe, if not Venerable Ananda, but the instruction was this: if you hold the dove in your hand too tightly, what happens? If you squeeze the dove, the pigeon, in your hand, what happens?
It's not going to be happy.
Yeah, and possibly it dies. If I'm squeezing the dove in my hands, it will die. What if I loosen my hands too much? What will happen? It will fly away. So when we talk about the middle path, these are not just empty words. Majjhima pada, this is a middle path. How? Between these two. And that's where panya has to be there. Wisdom must be there. But you also must soften. So if your body is not relaxed, you cannot experience piti. Spiritual joy, it's not going to happen but through force. That's why these people who practice and go on these long retreats, you get them at the right point, just tiny little scratch on the surface, and this mountain, this volcano of anger blows up in your face. And they were practicing metta. They were practicing meditation. What happened? Vipassana. What happened? Where did all that go? It was all lip service because they were forcing it. They weren't doing Dhamma. They weren't doing Dhamma. Simply because something is called Dhamma does not mean it's Dhamma. How do I know it's Dhamma? I have to check the suttas. I have to check the source. And Lord Buddha said, you have to check the suttas, the Vinaya, and the third one is your experience of it. How can I experience it? Through the body. You cannot say, I love you intellectually to someone and expect them to really believe that. You might convince yourself for some time that you love them, but sooner or later it's going to be proven to you that you don't. So your body must be involved. When you eat, you don't eat with your mind, do you? You need the body. So before we are intellectual beings, we are feeling beings. A baby, an infant, when they first land on this planet, they're not intellectualizing. They want to feel. They want to feel mom. They want to feel hands. They want to feel warmth. Their eyes are still closed. It's all about feeling. So metta is feeling based. And the organ of feeling, if you think about the organ of feeling, that's the heart. That's where we can generate metta. But oftentimes, if you recall, I mentioned most of us have tension and tightness around the heart. And that is because we have a very strong position towards ourselves. When I say strong, I mean unforgiving. We're too bitter sometimes towards ourselves. We hold ourselves accountable for too much, and we don't forgive. And that's why many people have a difficulty relaxing. I used to, as a therapist, I used to tell patients sometimes to go get a massage at a spa or something, just shoulders or something. And some of them would come back and say, well, my massage therapist is complaining because I never seem to relax enough, apparently. What does that mean? That means the connection between the body and the mind is severed. They don't know how to feel the body. So, does that mean we're indulging in feeling now? When I say...
Or maybe they're hooked on to pleasure. So
that's where I was just going now.
Okay.
So sometimes people will misunderstand when I say connecting with the body. That is not it, because you cannot experience sati just intellectually. You must feel it. See, this is where upekkha comes. Upekkha is not indifference. Upekkha is, well, the fourth Brahma Vihara, but it also shows up in its most complete form as part of the Satta Bojjhangas, the 7 factors of awakening. That is the balancing quality, which also has within it tremendous wisdom. Sati is the thing that will come and allow you to see that you are having an experience, a sensation. Sati, because of sati. But then Dhamma Vichaya comes. Dhamma Vichaya is the investigation of states, which is the second on the Satta Bojjhangas, the 7 factors of awakening. Dhamma Vichaya will come and say, this is a pleasurable experience, yes, as Sati was saying, but aren't you a little bit leaning too much into this pleasure? Aren't you wanting to have this more? You're owning it, you're holding on to it. So now there is upadana, the craving, the grabbing. This is beyond craving now, beyond tanha. So Dhamma Vichaya, which is also has within it the investigation quality, will show you that there's a difference between feeling the body the way it is. Feeling the body is different than indulging in a pleasurable feeling. See, Lord Buddha knew when he was eating a type of food that was delicious and a food, a dish that was terrible, but it didn't, he knew the differences. But he was also very much interested in what the mind might be approaching it as. For normal people, you and I, the mind will lean naturally towards the food that doesn't have, let's say, bitter gourd in it, right? It will like maybe the durian or something that's sweet, Why? Or honey, why? Because we have been used to eating things that are not bitter, let's say. the comfortable bed versus sleeping on the ground. So when there is the leaning into, it's like that person who's squeezing the life out of that dove. So in order for you to feel the heartbeat of the dove, you have to have the thumb and the fingers close enough to feel its warmth, but not to squeeze it dead. So there is now sati and sampajanya. Sampajanya is fully comprehending, understanding, full alertness of how your body is situated. Now, without looking, can you tell which leg is upright, which one is leaning to the side? That is the application of both. Now, as the practice deepens, what sati turns into is mahasati. And because of sati, you will have panya. What your panya will become is what teachers call mahapanya. That means you cannot separate sati from panya wherever you go. Sati is now sitting on your shoulder everywhere you go. And you also have, because of the presence of panya, you know the differences. You know if you are leaning away from something painful versus leaning into something pleasurable, or completely pushing away as something that is neutral. You're beyond it. You're seeing what's happening. You're seeing the sankharas as they take shape. And then you drop them right where they are. Pop, 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 pop. Slowly, you don't fight them. You can't get rid of the sankharas because they're an avalanche that's going to come at you because they started from beginningless time. There's no way you could eliminate sankharas going at them like bow and arrow and fight them one at a time or something. There's no such thing. It's impossible. But you can observe the mind as the sankharas are coming in. Because of the maturity of your understanding, the frequency of the sankharas will diminish. And this is where you will be able to eliminate one of those two arrows that Lord Buddha talks about that can be eliminated. See, we are shot by two arrows when we're born. One arrow is this body. You cannot avoid it. You're going to get sick. You're going to die eventually. All of us. That is unavoidable. The other one is avoidable if you have the Dhamma in your heart, if you're practicing properly, if you have panya, an understanding. And that is the poisoned arrow of ignorance. That is what we're getting rid of through understanding. You cannot force your way in. You have to understand. But what I'm trying to say is you cannot develop understanding if you don't have a connection with your body, with yourself. That's why most meditation practitioners are not going to go far. That's why we don't have that many arahants today as we did at the time of Lord Buddha. Because most people are severed, cut. We block. Most people are traumatized. And now after the 3 years of this, whatever's been happening in the world, everyone is traumatized. Everyone is afraid. So what do we need to do? Bring some compassion and kindness to yourself first. And that way you're starting the right way. So I would approach answering your question like that. How does it feel so far, how I'm answering?
Trying not to intellectualize too much.
Ah, good.
Feel more.
Feel more, yes. Because your baby, who is due very quickly in a few weeks, right? He will not care about your intellectual capabilities at all. You know this, but you will really know this. Even when he has his eyes closed, still looking at you and grabs hold of you, feels you, smells you. And when his eyes open and sees you, and finally sees you, the brain understands and visually comprehends who is in front, there's no intellect there. There's just life, fullness of life. And it doesn't interfere. Eventually, there's a joining of these two. I'm using intellect to speak, to use words, to tap into different things that I have understood and experiences, memories, all these things. Of course, we have to use intellect. But we have become top-heavy, extremely reliant on it. That's the problem. It's like a bird that wants to fly with one wing. It can't. It will fall and become prey to animals that are going to eat. And those animals, I'm using them as metaphors for samsara and Mara especially. You keep repeating, and wasting another life. So let's make the most of this very precious human life by starting to smile. To yourself, to your practice. Good question. It's not a passive affair. You don't come and join a club or join a religion. Let's call it Dhamma or Buddhism, and then that your life is going to be fixed. No, it's very involving. The person has the responsibility to lead one's life. And that's why it's all about sikkhapada. So when we take the precepts in the morning, what we're doing, it says, let's say, Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhi. Sikkhapadang means this is a training rule. For whom? Mine. I have to train myself. I have to train myself to learn those crafts, those skill sets. So you work in IT, you need to have the skills to be able to access. You've studied computer science, you've studied different languages, programming languages, this, that. You know when there's somebody saying something, a symptom about the computer, you have a very better understanding than I do as to what the causes might be. Okay, how did you know? You learned, you studied, so you have skills. How? You disciplined yourself, so you trained. Okay, we are not getting that training at school when it comes to dealing with life, especially when it comes to happiness. And the Dhamma is, to my experience, the best as far as it offering us the tools of understanding and gaining and really living happiness. Society, for the most part, anywhere you go in the world, some places more than others, of course, will teach you that if you maximize on pleasures, you will gain happiness. So if you have access to money, to resources, which will give you, gratify you, give you the indulgence, the opportunity to indulge in the 5 branches of your sense pleasures, then you definitely will be happy. That is the society, and that is what the programming that we have in the world been doing to children and to adults until the person has everything, but they're not happy. As a therapist, I used to see patients, and some of them would be at the top of their career. So I met individuals such as, let's say, GPs or doctors, medical doctors, who didn't owe anybody any money. And in America, in order for you to get to become a doctor, medical doctor, you will take a lot of loans from the government to pay for eventually. So I would have patients who would come that were physically healthy, good looking, athletic, so much money, and having a profession that everywhere you go on the planet, everyone will respect. So basically, you're at the top echelon of society. But they were miserable. So that completely shatters what society keeps telling us, ad agencies tell us. So the Dhamma, well, because of Lord Buddha teaching it, already has given us the tools to understand that there is a difference. Happiness will not come through these 6 sense doors, he says, clearly. And we see that clearly now. Now, as far as when a person is losing all the money, well, or giving it away, that is something that's very difficult for some cultures to appreciate. The money that you have generated, giving that away, that is kind of stupid. That's what society tells us. Well, that's exactly what Lord Buddha did. And not just him. Many of his students, they came not only from the Khattiya, the warrior class, or the kingly class, or caste system, but they even came from the Brahmin class. With a lot of wealth. And many of them were the single son, the only son of the family. They gave that up. And not only were they not having depression, not trying to go back onto back into the game of earning money. No, they gave it up. So happiness is not the result of you running after sense pleasures. That needs to be understood. Happiness comes through understanding of what we're talking about. The 3 trainings that I mentioned quite extensively today get you to experience happiness. But it's not something that you can go to the store and buy at Woolworths, or buy, at Kmart or somewhere, or order from Amazon. So it has nothing to do with the money you possess, the wealth, the prestige, none of that. Or even the robes. It's the heart. How do you practice? Because you might not have that much money anymore, or no money at all, but you might treat the Dhamma as your possession. We're back to square one. No changes have happened. So now you're not holding on to, grabbing onto your bank account, savings account, but you're holding on to something else, the Dhamma. That's the other trap that many people fall into, and they become gurus, or they become their own captives. Captors, actually. The warden. So Dhamma has nothing to do with these. It has to do with understanding. And that's what this path is all about. It's about wisdom. It's not about rites and rituals. It's not about just memorizations and things like that. It's not also about just sitting and sitting and sitting. There was one teacher who would just encourage the students to sit long. There were people who were sitting, I think the longest I sat once was 8 hours or 6 hours. But that was nothing compared to others who were sitting like 12 hours. I'm talking no movement.
Aditana.
No movement at all. So you would move as much as the Lord Buddha's statue does. But nothing was happening. You will never be able to sit as beautifully, as more solidly as a rock, So that doesn't ensure the Dhamma will be in your heart. So it's all about practice and understanding why the person is giving all that money up. So there needs to be the right view, which is the first of the Noble Eightfold Path. Sammaditthi has to be there. Otherwise, why are you giving up if you're going to go and grab something else? So that's why I always insist on informing people that you don't necessarily have to become a monk to taste the Dhamma. Many of Lord Buddha's students were in fact lay people, upasakas and upasikas, male and female. And they were experiencing first state of awakening, sotapanna, sakadagami, anagami. So many of them. So you can attain those while you are a layperson. So please go back to studying the Dhamma proper from the suttas and develop an appreciation and see your own life there. And then make the choices. You make the choices yourself, without anyone's influence. Not culture, not tradition, not this, not that. And then you start to see that it's not the possession or the seeking of more enjoyments from these 6 sense doors that will give you happiness. There's a term called santutti in Pali, which is the state of contentment. It has piti, it has sukha in there. That's why when we're going through deeper levels of meditation, such as the jhanas, we go into these factors of jhanas, and sukha is there. But the mind also becomes to the point of unification. We call it ekagata. And then you know if you're on the right path or not. Yes, Sukhyavat. Let us pause here.
Some tea and fruit.
Yes. Let us transfer some merits. So if you could just hold your hands like this, I'll chant in Pali. Akasatha chabumata deva nagamahindika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanang. Akasatha chabumata deva nagamahindika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desanang. Akasatha chabumata deva nagamahindika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All that Dhamma that was shared, may the merits also be shared with all your loved ones, those who are alive, those you carry in your hearts, those who have moved on into different forms, and especially the petas, the hungry spirits, the ghosts that we have, and who are in very much misery, terrible states, and they are the most welcoming of your, willingness to give. And by simple, intentional thought from you, a wish, genuine wish of metta from you towards them, in sharing this merit of hearing, listening to the Dhamma attentively, could even send them off to another realm of existence. Some of them have been lingering in that world for a terribly long time. And they're totally neglected. No one cares for them, no one knows them. Most of their relatives who knew them have moved on and they've forgotten about them. But because of their attachments and greed towards money, towards this, they have been reborn as a peta, hungry ghost. So there's no even relatives to give them, like make a small altar to offer food or a glass of water. So they're fully forgotten. And then when you're sharing this, transferring merits, you don't care who these people are. You're giving them, that raises their level of existence. And they're so touched. Now you introduce something warm and beautiful into their hearts. They are reborn. Some of them even reborn as animals or even as humans, sometimes even as devas. They just jump because they also have other merits, because none of these realms are permanent. So you just have to reach a certain level, a cap, and but they don't get that boost, and you just gave them boost. So please remember to do that as often as possible. Yes.